Oh good, you're back. So while you're out, I did a little bit of work. I'll catch you up to speed here. Sometimes I just got to get stuff done without doing a recording. Currently have some pieces out in the machine shop, but let me pause it, flip the camera, and we'll get started again. So here's where we're at. What I've done, now you might notice the axle, it's a little bit longer. Axle's out in the machine shop as well as the gear for the crankshaft. So I needed something to stand in place of it, so I got an 1.5 inch, which is very close to 38 millimeter because that's my axle size. I went through some of my mounts. What I mean by mounts is I had a few of these mounts here which are seat braces and stuff like that for carts. It was in a box I had. So I found one that's going to work to give me kind of a brace for the motor this way. You'll notice I have some spacers here, or also known as nuts. That's about the thickness of the flywheel cover, so it kind of keeps the motor in place while I'm doing this measurements and setting everything up. I gave a measurement from the center of the crank to the axle. I went to the other side, measured the little pinhole from center of the crank to the axle, get it somewhat close. But what else I've done is I've went ahead and I've drilled and had to relieve some of my welds here for the socket head cap screws, also known as Allen heads, so that I can bolt this bracket a little bit tighter to the motor. I drilled the holes for the pillow block bearing and I tapped them. I was hoping to be able to use nuts down there, but this is so close over this here. Gotta get in the frame. It's so close over it, when I drilled down I actually hit this piece, so I had to do die grinding and then thread it. And if that doesn't work and it doesn't hold, what I'll have to do is I'll have to get studs, run them in there, weld them around the bottom so they don't move, and then leave the stud in there and put a nut on top. This will give me the ability to raise the pillow block bearing up with a spacer, or slide these, because these holes in these pillow block bearings are oval for adjustment. That'll allow me to slide it back. The up and down will give me adjustment for this chain. The forward to backward will give me adjustment for the chain that goes from here down to the axle. These pillow block bearings, to kind of show you here, are self-centering, meaning if I hit it, see, I can get an angle on this because inside these pillow block bearing area they have kind of a ball seating setup. So I need to get it fairly close here as far as level, and I've been using a carpenter's level to check here to the axle to the frame. Of course, the axle should be level to the frame. That's where I'm currently at. What I'm looking at doing now is building a way to connect this to this, this to this, everything together, and make sure that it's properly aligned here. Once I have that down and this side braced on the left side here, I will work on the bracing down here, and then I may do something more like this on the other side too. Not sure what I'll cover with video, but that's where I'm currently at. Kind of excited to get the axle back, because once I get the axle back, I'm hoping by that point I will have all this empty area figured out. Alright, let's get working. Okay, so I'm got this kind of mocked up a little bit more. I'm trying to contemplate how I'm going to mount the bracket here to the cart rails. I would really like to use round stock so it doesn't look so hokey, but I'm not going to run clear into town, find some round stock that's the same size and wall thickness as the frame, because I've got metal here and that's like round trip, hour and a half, 2 hours. So what I've kind of come up with is I would like to use more of this rectangular stock that I have laying around, this stuff here. It's the same stuff I used to make that mount for the motor. I thought about coming in off the frame ends like this and connecting it here, but I don't like that angle there. I'd really like to connect all the way across, straight angles, but that's really not going to work. I really want to also leave the frame ends open so I can use the rear bumper to leave it more original looking. I think what I'm coming up with is laying this in here like this, a piece straight across all the way, and weld it into the sides of the frame Obviously not on the outside, but something like this. This is going to give me this forward edge if it catches anything. Well, you can't see that because of the light outside, but imagine this be the forward side. It's going to give you that forward edge that's not going to catch as easily. If I ran it like this, it'd give me the forward edge right here to kind of catch on things and maybe bend under or bend it easy. I'm hoping if upside down, it'll almost skip across it. Plus, this gives me the ability to take this front edge and weld it across the bottom of this. If this was the front, it would give me solid connection right like that. So I'd have a good bevel to weld onto. The only thing downside to it is going to be up front here. If I can get it in there. Let me get a smaller piece. Yeah, that will work better. Much like this. Gonna give a straight across piece. The only problem is I got all this hanging out the back side. Not sure yet. Most likely that's the direction I'm going. We'll see here in a bit. I'll probably mock it up, weld this small piece to that small piece. That'll give me the 20 inches I need across there. Still thinking. We'll pick the video up from that point. Alright, hopefully this makes a little more sense this time. My plan is to take this, set this in like this. I got, well, I can't hold it quite right angle, but I got an angle cut in that thing to where it'll mate up to that round tube nice and well. So I got the two pieces welded together. I ground that by hand, and then the extra length, I actually did that end with a plasma cutter. So it's kind of close, just a little long, just barely too long. So I got to get that ground up, get that to mate in right there well, and then I'll tack it in and see how it looks. Yeah, that's the plan there. Tucked in nice and tight there. Tucked in nice and tight there. I don't have it tack welded yet, but what I'm talking about as far as it catching something, if this edge was down, it might catch something a little easier. Fold this or pull it or bend it. With the other side down, it almost acts as like a something that would skip over instead. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So I gotta get that tubes cleaned up, get all the edges beveled, and then tack it in. Well, measure it, square it up, and then tack it in. Set the motor on it and see how it's going to look. Okay, so I tacked it and I unbolted the motor and I welded across that angle. I welded across here, then I welded this end of this cross bracket here, that angle. After I welded this bead here, as you can see from heat, it pulled out of square. So I got to flip it over, weld the bottom side underneath of it, and hopefully it'll pull back down. If not, when I add the braces from here to the top and also finish this to here, I'll get that straightened out. But while it's hot, I gotta flip her over, give it a pull, and see if we straighten out. Okay, there she is, all welded in. Got the bottom done, and I welded across that strip, of course, the best I can, and that's where I put the two halves together. I know some of you are thinking, well, geez, why did you unstrap it and flip it over? Well, you see, that would be welding upside down. First of all, I'm not a welder. Secondly, I'm not a welder. So I got to make this thing sit the best possible I can, because I can barely get two things to stick together with duct tape. So there it is, and planning the top braces now, and the section that'll hold the jack shaft. So got to flip it back over. Okay, so now I'm trying to come up with something that goes from either this tube to the back and this tube to the back. I might even incorporate this one over. And I got looking at the old rear section off of the CX bobber where these loops came back and down and around. I cut them off of this section here and I have them sitting over here. I'm thinking, here's what I'm thinking. Me and my crazy ideas. Thinking about tying in, oops, gotta get the camera in frame, tying into here, coming up to this side on the back. Dang, I can't even watch what I'm doing. Okay, tie into here with this piece. What's that? Oh, that's the Honda sticker. Or, no, not a VIN plate, just specification. Emissions control. Tie into here and come up to this piece here, much like this on this side. Then maybe on this side, lay it, because I want to use this hole for the original bumper. Slice into this tube where it sits on here, kind of like, oh, down here, kind of like that fashion, and connect up to here. So I'm going to see if I can cut these, see what they look like after I cut them. I got to take all this bracketry off of these darn things, and I get them cut, get them ground. Before I tack them in, I'll show you what they're supposed to look like. Okay, there's the 2 brackets. They should, when I get done, sit in the manner of that there. That leaves this one open for my bumper. Like I say, I don't even have them ready to tack in yet, getting close, but that would be that one. This one, obviously, I have to remove a few things from it before I weld it in there. This one I notched, let's see if I can get a picture of it, in that manner so that it can sit there, leaving the end of that open, and it would sit just like that. That's going to give some support to the rear. Really, the main support is this front one, but this will give it a little bit of support. And then with the side brackets that I'm adding in, which are old seat brackets from a different cart, would be here. I'd have one in here to give it a little bit of, well, actually it's going to have more of a pull back, but it'll give it support on the top side. The left one, I have to figure that out once I get all the jack shaft, the exhaust, the sprockets, everything else in there. So let me get these tacked in. Actually, let me get this one all ground smooth, tacked in, and gosh, I need to do a little more video of actual work. So moving on. I'm getting ready to do some welding. I got these cleaned up. Got the edges beveled. Can I get this in frame? I couldn't quite get this one to fit around the end, so once I get it tacked in, I'm going to hit it with a hammer here, right here. My thumb's at. Bend that in, then fully weld it up. So that one's going to sit like that. This one here, got all cleaned up, going to sit just like that. I think I'll clean it up a little bit more. I'll hit it with the sanding flapper on my angle grinder. Well, let me get it ready, prepped, and we'll get some welding going. Okay, here goes something. I don't like to say here goes nothing, because no matter what, it's going to be something. It's all welded on there. I'm actually surprised for what I'm looking at with these pieces of round on here. It really ties it in together well. I thought it was going to look really hokey jokey with that squat or that angle iron. There it is. But it actually turned out really well. I'm glad I chose to use that old motorcycle frame piece. I really like that. All I have left to do, since I have this one top support in there, is once I get the setup for the jack shaft in there, the sprockets and everything in there mocked up, and the exhaust on the motor, I can figure out what I'm going to do for the brace in here. I was just thinking I might be able to go one off of here with another, come and triangulate it kind of, but I also want to put some sort of bracing on this side for the jack shaft, so I might forego the idea of triangulating it and use something in here. I don't know, might use a triangle from here to here, from here to here, but I'm going to have sprockets and I got all kinds of things to deal with once I get them in there. That's the process of fabrication. Alright, done for the day, I believe.